We'll begin with the Heart Sutra in English on page 2. Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Ultra-Big Mountain, with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of a lineage train wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomenon. There is no quality of sight, and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on up to no old age and death, and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas, unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassable mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as true, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teyanta om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisattva. Shariputra, this is how a bodhisattva mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One rose from that samadhi and said to the bodhisattva mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he is well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as was taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, and suras and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed.
Jibu jambe yangla chase lo kange lo de tini dende nyenda nana razebe chinye dungu chishi si yeye toga lebante kanda sibe zara mare mendo donge ye sibe Chozo gongla puji dade yela zhongzhe yangye song. Chodara chedo nimo nilo leye chado zhe che. Mari mese donge nyugo chenye jede le de na. Dene tachi sachi tazi yende le zo ki se te go Chu Dra Ju Da Ju Ni Gin Da Lu Me Se Jan Be Yang La De Arabasana Di Arabasana Di Arabasana Di Chenye Kera Se Talu Demo Mbara Sene Kada Denju Shanglo Doba Ye Lo Zhe Bobe Nawa Se Do Se
Short mandala offering on page 16. Saji Poki
Joje Me Bo Dang
Ra Jil Yute Gen Pa De Sangye Jingdu Mite
Pe Wa Ye Chogu Nam
Pa
Lang
Jingla Chupara Shon Jetsu Nama Dapa Kinan Ki Chogu Kala
Chenze Den Den Ne Ji Da Sam
Sambe de Jesemala Sagi Chiki Chapa Abdurus Yedan Guru
Tena
Rajan
Me De La Gan Ne Ya Da Ya Ne
Refuge prayer on page 22. Sanjay Chodan
Oji Chona La Chanju Bado Dane Kyosuje Tagi Kungi Ves Kunamgi Chola Deje Sanje Ruha Shu
Sanjay
Shudan Soji Chona La Chanju Bado Dane Kyosuje Tagi Jinsu Jives Kunamgi Chola Deje Sanje Ruha Shu
Sanjay Exotil Chonam
Janju Bado Dane Gyalsu Dagi Jinsu Jive Sonanji Chola Benje Sanje Duhar Shu Olas Ane Tangaranzo Tanda Ma Teshe Jari di Xijing Rwa Tende Yindi Zambala Tangazo Ma Todo Reji Soto Gumedo Tangazo Tsindi Reji Gyabje Chorwa Tende Yindi Ma Do su yabo chene todo rabo je sene shibze re che ma zhugu yinbi yina ane jidang gombo lu zhugi song re re de song rwa tende yindu zamba la ya shi jing de na la ya peje kibu somje lamji rinpa chasang rabo je tena la yesarwa ta yama kongho rabo je zhug ne tende tanga zogi ji kaso re yabo je jingba tu de yana kongho zhug de ki rabo je je dwa 텐데데 보지마 도지기 신 데나라야 마방제 야보지 디비 임비나 안 기부 숨지 남이름 바 차상와지 데나라 땡게 예사레스
So it's the Nagarjuna is letter to friend. That subject matter we're dealing with. It's actually, if you look at carefully, it actually presents the teachings on the three scopes. The the teachings on small scopes, middling scopes, and the great scopes. All those teachings of the three scopes are actually, it actually contains the teachings on the of the three scopes within this the Nagarjuna's letter to friend. And so at this point, we're not actually going through those outlines and introducing the three scopes, but we're rather focusing on the verse by verse explanations.
Oh yeah 텐데 인데 잠발야
Let's with the microphone.
Well, I don't, the microphone's not working at all.
Microphone's working.
Oh, it's not the.
It's working.
Speaker?
Cũ nè, cái là nghe cái cũ rồi.
또 송대 체르당或者또 그거 있어 말해.
You guys okay? Are you guys done? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you could, the microphone is working. Yeah.
Can we get directional?
이거 말해.
Can we get directional?
No, 예.
Oh, I see it. Try to go to. Okay, no problem. I'll listen hardly.
No.
알았어. 어딘데 인데 좀 발라야. 딘데 인데 좀 발라야. 다 가서 그래. 단단하게 지시 고쳐서 제제스 디바라. 대르발라. 가서 그래. 시딩데 나게 안에 된다데 마 야보지 디비 이미나 안에 시딩나라 양원에 안에 람링기 기부숨지 람리 비겐데 내 차장 유도 잠발라야 안에 단다 가서 그래 파조 람림다야 빼자 신다나라야 시딩게 롱데 망보슈 차나기도 된다 내가 치서 가자라야 안에 시베팅이레스네 시딩게 롱데 망보슈 차샤기도 어디에 인도 잠발라야 되나게 람랭게 사제 가사가나라야 돼 망보질래용도
This letter to friend, the Nagarjuna's letter to friend actually presents stages of the path, which is the lamrim. And actually, encapsulates the contents of the stages of the path. And if you look at the many different stages of the path written by the different masters, you'll find a verse that is quoted in that and the various lamrims from the letter to friend, which clearly, which actually means that the Nagarjuna's letter to friend actually presents the stages of the path to enlightenment.
어딘데 인도 양마 방직부레지 당가란족의 재단 제위나 방직부레시다 메데게 안 카시에게 아니 측지에 카시에게 동반이게 돈다도 숙침부 대용게 양 카시에게 잔주게 생게 돈다도 숙침부 대용게 양 카시에게 지 중당 아니 미다바도 숙침부 대용게 측된데 지 가서 그래다 톱자케 잘라 된데 레용게 된데 두스
So if you go through this, the verse, we go through the readings of the verse itself, the letter to friend. Though it presents the stages of the path that we talked about earlier, the three scopes, the teachings of three scopes, it looks like, but doesn't really, presents in an orderly manner. Because when we go through the reading of this verse, sometimes we find in the verse which actually emphasizes on the teachings of the renunciations. At other time, the other verse actually presents the teachings on, emphasizes the teachings on the practice of bodhicitta, and then and the teachings and the emphasizes as other verses again. As some verses, it emphasizes teachings on the wisdom realizing emptiness, and so forth. However, those teachings are not actually arranged in orderly manner in this letter to friend, Nagarjuna's letter to friend. Although it presents, overall, it presents the stages of the path or the teachings on the three scopes.
어딘데 인도 좀 발라야 기성 뒤에 공기 아니 시제 가시지 마 방딩네 아니 가서 그래 동반이 다 지지 10주 10개보다 19거 되게 안에 독일 농장에 안에 가서 그래 동이 시구로 쓰고 말해 동이 시구 속 동반이 속해야 돼 말듯이 잡나서 아니 10주 10개다 시구 되게 계산가서 다음에 다와도 숙침부 되나서 다 되네 대지기 지지 아니 납주 다양한 중가 집발리샤. 집제 ngabju badige ane deredwa. Reje. Shibju shibjena shibusha ta tenal ngabju ngaji reje leomodo. Odi ngabju ngaji badige ane tombang kunjo sum bangya de che. Ane de wogi sije dozoge laba sum nyamlen che atende che ne ma bang je leone yang tiring tene metak be kala ma leong ge reje cha troso. Tiring ge sije ngabju nga dang ngatu badige.
So previously, we have we discussed on the emptiness, which is presented in the verse 49 and verse 50, which talks about, which emphasizes more on teachings on the emptiness of the four sets of emptiness. And then the last two verses that we have gone through, and the one presents about renunciation and then how to gain liberations out of as a result of perfecting one's practice of renunciations. And then the verse 53 actually, emphasizes on meditation on impermanent and so forth. And then 54 that we were again here, focusing on how one can engage in the practice of being mindful, and it talks about the mindfulness of characteristic of the behaviors of the body and so forth. And then 55 will really talks about practices on more, the impermanent.
Oh yeah, that's it. In the Indian Zambalaya, that in my bangji shishagi. Tiringi, teaching of you, and Gonda. Teaching of you, one, and in Mitaba Dingidi. Sene Nama Lungi Tabayi, Chui Chubu Veja, Medana Serva. Uyung Niji Lobale, second Kalatin and Motarches. Derecha, that's the Tambodishina.
So let's read this verse 55. Verse 55 here, it says, many things can damage your life. It is more impermanent than the bubble on a river, tossed by the wind, any respite from death. You may have to breathe out, but breathing in and to awaken from having fallen asleep, that is utterly amazing.
어디 나란족이 가서 그래 소 손에 대고 야기 세대 아니 빼마시 가서 그래 지 소라야 다 가서 그래 너봐 소 소야라 너봐 지기 다세 파지 지기 너봐 빼마시 망보래 해서와 망보 여와 대페나 아니 롱식 첨부나라 요게게와 롱부식 첨부 자격이 아니 취나라 유베 취보아디 롱식 첨부 잡디 취나게 보아디 다 골람산 되로라 롱게 요네 오 대배자 안에 가란주 세대 미다바 사게레스 누바만게레 예서와 근데 인도 아니 근데 누바만보 인도 잠발라야 오 마타니 아니 양읍주 중화다 하서와 오 마타니 양읍주 중화다 야음네 마땅주 중화데 대파라를 마시네 대하대 아는 가랑 좀 배디 항상 관야를 지레서와 안에 대공 드림권다 많이 로네르와 산인 쇼베야 세용해야 된 거네 전에가 당고 시민도스르와 시민도데 시야가 발제망고 뒤기는 가랑 타라시아스니 항상 관야를 지레서와 어디데 송도와
So this verse actually talks about an individual's life is subject to many kinds of harm from humans and non-humans, externally and from illness, other disorders of the elements, internally. It is less enduring than the bubble in the steam blown about by the wind. So there are more conditions, unfavorable condition to our life, the sustenance of life, than the favorable conditions or sustenance of our life. So we do not know when our life will be ended, and it is a less enduring than the bubble and the steam blown about by the wind in the water, if you take it as a metaphor. So although that we are going to bed with the sound health, and in the morning we're uncertain whether we will wake up with sound health as we went to bed at the night. And when we find yourself waking up from your bed without any illnesses and without any problem of one's health, and one should be appreciative and rejoiced in one's life, being able to sustain, even though there are many other conditions that are unfavorable to our sustenance of our life.
어디다 단대디 측제디 아니 다 로페지 아니 니동 니겨제가 좋다 산지 육냥에래 되네 아니 로시베제 로시베 침베제라야 아니 공부루도 페오라 얼로 니동 니겨제기 응얼라야 공부루도기 송샤레스 테갑라야 아니 지딩라야 추릭다 지딘데 유딘데 야게 다 도요 말와 되디 다 대갑라야 공부루도기 갑 되들 진내가 안에 세대베디 너바망보레스 아니 롱게 답에 추추나 생기 베직라보레 딘데 송여바스 다 단다 대갑라 레다 단대게 내갑라야 아니 마란조 세대 너바 마마차데 요레스로와 너바 마마차네 다 대갑라야 딘데기 직라보지 유나 단다 딜레 직라와 차 요르바스.
So this teachings has given the teachings of Nagarjuna's letter to friend is given more than 2,200 years ago, where this teaching is given by Nagarjuna after 400 years of Buddha's parinirvana. So as he has mentioned that our life is subject to many kinds of harm, because we have more unfavorable conditions to our sustenance of our life than the favorable conditions of sustenance of our life. So it is really true. It's almost like it says it is a less enduring than a bubble in the steam blown about by wind. So if this is the statement that Nagarjuna has made more than 2,200 years ago. But if you look at right now this conditions of unfavorable conditions of the sustenance of our life is increase even more. We are facing more danger to our life than the life that we had 2,200 years ago.
제가 단다 양 간조 페이지 러리 남들라 자이나 지금나라 러리 첨모이나 지금나라 선배 gen남자 치진도 교바 사주래 선배 gen남자 치진규 치배 gen도 교그레스 텐데 송도 잠발라야 답 나란조 단다 치배 gen도다 요게도다 다 독자와다 직도다 나란조게 배파 잼네 말레와 지기로와 당나란조게 지 칼라사야다 대주 참마다 지 선배 야 선야기 야보차야기를 와체네데 칼라 야보사 지 쉬우지기로 다이나 대조기 자자 자담바 선진 리베스나 대조기 치진의 요구 말베스나 나란조기 아니 대치도 말와 될래야 대 치진의 요구 말에서 라도 말에 자자 자담바 선배 진 차기를 했으니 대가 나잘랑게 말에 나 대가 소토고 말에서 라도 말에 나란조 선진의 선배견라야 칼라사야다 대도 참하게 간장선의 소설을 내지 써네 안티기 치진의 주고 여러와 제도 점발라야 선배견도 치진의 주고 여러 송 여러와스.
So it is therefore we find in the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa, where he has stated that our very the very things that we consider as something that sustenance of our life can become a destroyer of our life. Although that we'll be able to identify such as poisons and some harmful things that we can be careful and be aware and be able to maintain our behaviors, something that is not affected by those harmful objects. However, if you think about the food that we eat, the food that we are eating, the reason we are eating food is to sustain our life, isn't it? It is for this purpose we are eating our foods. The food that we are that need for us on our day-to-day life is to sustain our body, our life. However, even those foods that we are consuming, our consumption of foods will not totally safe for us. We cannot certain it is not certain that those foods that cannot turn into a poison and affects us and take our life.
어딘데 이제 단다 등산 대급라야 등산 중에 다 칼라 참마 아니 지 주마다 아니 제규리 인조다 근데 망보선도 좀 발라야 되네 칼라라 배시우지 개보지 파유 수유 근데 전에 배 사단 개보다 동단 개보시라 맞잖아 아니 칼라도 그 안에 내놔서 써야기 내가 빼 첨부치 안에 등사로 안에 배디지 가서 그래 문에 단에 선배한테 시진을 줘야기 내가 등산 채워도 왔어.
So the reason why I say that now we have even more condition to death rather than condition to sustain our life, because now if you look at ourselves at this point, the food that we are consuming, isn't it? We are all aware and we all know now there are a lot of foods which contains high levels of chemicals, and we are being very careful with that. And even though when we are served with such a delightful food right in front of us, and we're being very careful, making sure those foods are not actually contaminated by the chemicals and so on and so forth. So, which is how much the conditions of destroying our life. What the reason why I'm saying this is because the the unfavorable condition of our sustenance of life is far more greater now than back in Nagarjuna's time.
내가 아주 배워게 담배라야네 계라 그러와 자동 박스에 전화 안 소라 니가 매서와 chatung ane paji bu sadewi na ane sola nyinga teki ma res tende sigi yores rwa ta ina yang tingsangi tugola ya ane zamba ki ane nazala nuki dusine zamba ki jini nazapa ki dusine ta tingsan nima ina zamba ki chikangla nuki ma re tende sigi yore ta tingsan zamba ki ane sobola nazalangi chade yores.
And we also have in Tibetans long time ago. The Tibetan actually, the primary food for the Tibetans is the tsampa, as you all know. It's a barley, the roasted barley flour is the main food that has been consumed by Tibetans back in Tibet. And what they have saying that if you are able to eat only tsampa and then tea, then you will have a better life. Or in other words, you'll be able to sustain your, longevity. However, at this point now, even the tsampa or the roasted barley flour is said to be containing a sugar. It actually, if you consume a lot of, roasted barley flour or the tsampa, it is said that your sugar level is going up. So therefore, nowadays you could see the edible things that we have in the past. So it doesn't have any sugars, but now we see there's some sugars is actually added into it. So with the consumption of this kampa, it actually increases your sugar level.
어딘데 인데 안에 다른 산지 나자 담면다 망보 쉬우지 여러 나자 담면다 망보 쉬우지 니만 명이야 권요면 여기 나자 담면다 망보 쉬우지 보야 그래 밀어야 다 딘데지 인데 잠발라야 딘데지기 나라야 공부루루기 숨바나신 딘데지기 나라야 도고 마년에 산이야 라야 춤바디 마시와 야 라야 춤바디 ngotsarbo 빼마시 항상 고야래 해서봐 지가서 그래 땅 앞에 딘데지 타샤 되네 항상 고야지래 숨부로 왔어 딘데 송와 될라 땜베이나 아니 다 등산게 되고 될라야 다 나란서 아니 가서 그래 딘데지기 아니 너바만 보러 와 셀라 너바만 보 딘데지기 기네 안 나란서 단다 다가지야 초토바디로 로 다가지야 초토바디 너바 디기기네 야 타르토바디 아니 공부루두기 담 드링 많이 했네 산이야 라야 중바디 항상 그래 숨바나시 말한도 네바 뭐 딘데지기 기네 다다사바 소토바디 뭐네 전에 뭐잘 찍고 바라레스.
So now we are witnessing and we see a lot of different, epidemics, pandemics that we have never heard in the past. We're going through all kind of sicknesses, the suffering of sicknesses, the sickness that we have never seen in the past. As Nagarjuna has stated, that we have more condition to our death than the actual sustenance of our, sustenance of our life. So isn't that amazing? Isn't that something that is to be rejoiced, to worthwhile to be rejoiced, being able to wake up in the morning without, affected by those unfavorable conditions of the sustenance of life. So one should be really, be delighted to be able to sustain our life up until now, right from the birth that is one is given by one's mother, and up until now, how long we have been be able to sustain our life. Although that we are living in the world, and we're living in a circumstances where we face more condition to death than sustenance of our life.
오야 딘데 뭐 살고지래 그러와 이나양 안에 다치지 ngab중가 두버디게 땜바나 신세네르와 안에 간단만 단계 다고 가지 땜베이나 간단만 그 타마레 되고 안에 다 미다베라 시송자고 타마레 되고 아니 배 세줘야다 조줘야지 임바 땡게레스 대 시쟁가 중가 두바데 땡게도스.
However, the long life that we may have, we're all subject to, to face ultimate journey, which is we're subject to disintegrations. We will be disintegrated as we are remaining under the power of impermanence of our life. So for that, the verse 56 talks about, there's no way of sustaining our impermanent body for forever.
어디시지 어중가 두바데게 르다 태워라 타르금 타르 줄리싱스 타마라 메잔님 본마치 바라 남브라 직딩 냐바라 교와데 소소르 개추 젠 소소르 개추 젠도 켐바라 즈스.
So the verse 56 here, we read the end point of the body is to wind up as ashes, or to wind up and dried out of the petrified, or in the end to become excrement. Realize that having no essence, it is something that will be consumed and dissecate, rot, or be chewed into a bits.
어디인데 다 르디 가제야 체름 뭐 대비나 가제 잡고 대비나 타마레디 아니 야면나 메다자네 타와주야 태월주야래 봐. 야면나지 캄보레지 차 캄보레지 차 줘야다. 아니 가서래 야면나 다 가서 별라이나 자기를 자벨을 제기로 같은데 사줘야다. 아니 가서 그래. 아니 깜줘야다. 르줘야라 소바 텐데지 차야지를 왔다 가서 텐데지 손장라야 아니 다지 매장와 닝보마 집어지 텐데지에서 육샤야 저리마도 저기 펜토야 자원이네 면교지에서 타마레들이야.
So at the
텐데지 러스러스
end, regardless of how much we cherish this body at the moment, but at the end, when this lifeless body will become essenceless, there's something that can be cherished, right? It might be, the bodies can turn into ashes after the cremations, and then in Tibet they have a custom of practicing this sky burials, and then at least the bodies of the deceased, the fleshes can be fed those vultures and so forth. And so it's clearly mentioned in the verse 57. It says that there's no mention something that extremely frail, like a body of a man. It says like, so that not even their ashes will remain, and will burn up through the shining of seven suns and so forth.
어딘데선데 단단 아람족이 시우지에 소보당에 류스네 시우지 다보잡 지보체로와 아니 되게 지야되게 간담선에 뒤에 수술로 단거를 수술에 될려 단지 줘야리 되게 대인바디 시험바치고로 해서와 다 대인바디 시험바치제 가르 대 류들라야 된대게 봐꼭 타마된바치제 아니 간섭선의 거 아니 조줘야 이거 세줘야 이거 펜토야 면조지 차줘야 이거데 신이 가르치고 그래서나 다 코디 펜토야 매들리지 매버지 신수나 아니 다 될라야 배 착신시라 제마 접어져봐 착신시라 제마 되버체네 아니 다 대마 인버게 양자 될래 약지 수유라 약이 제와지 가란도 지구로 왔어 빼는 가란도 강바고 루저버지게 난 대제 안에 강바디 펜토야 자원이네 매를 차서나 가서 그래 다고 간선선에 자주 지제다 로제만에 그 다 대년매래 차사리 섬나 다 강바디 파 샤제 강바 사와제 라야게 지자워마도 당가 강바 델라 차신치야 요 말바스 대나신 류디 딘데게 닝부 메바지 신소나나 하고와지 전에 안에 가르치고 그래서나 다 델라 차신시 담아져버지 안에 델레 약지기 양교류딘지 영향이 데려와자 그러바스
The body that we have been cherished right from the beginning of our life. We have been cherished so much, and we cling onto it and grasp onto it and cherished this body so much. And such a body that we have we must understand the body that we cherish is subject to undergo disseminations, undergo disintegrations. So it is the body that we have at this point is something that is so fragile and something that has having no essence at all. By knowing that, instead of having too much attached towards our body and too much cherishing our body, one should prepare for having a better body in the future. Not being attached to one's body, but rather one should look for a better life with a better body in the future. This is, again, having a better body and better life cannot coming into being from nowhere. It has its own causes and conditions. One need to accumulate causes and conditions which give rise to a better body and better future body and life in the futures. So this body that we should understand that regardless of how much we cherish this body, the body is subject to undergo disintegrations, right? One day we will have to leave this body. Later or sooner, we will not be able to attach to this body, physically. We will have to leave this body behind and travel by oneself, all by oneself, without having this body. Just like the house that we have been used for a very long period of time, and when the house run out of its time, then instead of having attachment towards this house, we need to destroy this house and get a new house, right? Without having an attachment to that. Similarly, when we see ourselves, our body, if we see this the fragile body that we have, instead of having an extreme attachment towards that, we should look for a better body and better life in the future.
어딘데선데 단다 디나라야 다 키랑기 디 공부로두기 아니 개보되지 선보라 제장아란주 류데다 류냠중데다 타르마 직로야 이임바르 와스 류데다 지야 이임베 마세 아니 가란주 단다 대사기 디 가서그래 다세 골라서 말해 디 사신대비 세 골라체르와 다디 직디 말로샤는 디기도 지지 납주 나두바데 사단 lum보님 자존님마데 바르베 세베 류진 대다장 태와 점야 르버면 요나 신도 냠중 메다 메지 제세 어다 경기 당보데 로샤나
That's one. So the next verse, it is not only that the body disintegrates, but even the world that we live into, the world system that we the human world that we are living into is also subject to undergo disintegrations. For this explains in the verse 57, it clearly explains about how even the world systems undergo disintegrations. Here it says, if even the earth, Mount Meru, and the oceans, just physical bodies, will burn up through the shinings of seven suns, so that not even their ashes will remain, it says. What need is there to remain? Something extremely frail, like a body of a man.
어딘데 인데 가서 그래. 다 ngaranzo 류 냠중데다 이바르 왔으와. 아니 ngaranzo 사시 침부 대제. 아니 리게고 리잡체. 갸조 대조 상말로 아니 타마레 될야. 다 잡도 바위 니마 뉘스야 되샤는 와 ngazo 개바 타마 지도 되좀 발야. 아니 잡도 바위 니마 당보 니와 숨바스니 다 되네 버기 나라야 되요래. 니마 잡도 바위 니마 지 샤도 좀 발야 되네. 대가서 그래 추진도 좀 되네 니바샤도 지신 나젤라 소바감 아니 숨바 차도스 되네 니마 주버도 바도 샤도 되네 타이 자조 침복감스니 니마 dum바 샤도 좀 발라야 아니 나라도 되제 콜라도 시부도 베데 탈라 주두고 요레스니 마 직딩감데 마 직단데 단단가 좀 나가 나라야 사와도 베나라 된대 요래 링가마데 마 동도도 된데서 동버레스르바 dada de ngaranzo ngamade ma tongdu o de sunde zambalaya da dandalaya dosu tongdu gres jigdini ma tongdu de zambalaya de sun yores ba ani o de nima denge ani barwe pasik je ta lyujin de da jang serwa tewa zang ya lubo mi juna ani 신도 냠중 미다 메지세스 아니 다 사다 름부데 조베데 태와젤을 하게 말해 아니 미다 이임바르 와스 근데 이임바르 와스네 어딘데 숨샤
So, as we mentioned earlier, not only that our body is subject to undergo disintegrations, but the world system, the world that we live in, including entire, in short, the globe, entire globe, including Mount Meru and the oceans, and all this physical world, the body that we see are subject to undergo disintegrations. It is according to Guesamaja's Tantra, where it explains about the process of dissolutions of the world, where it mentions about becoming extremely hot and heated up by the powers of the seven suns, where initially due to this heat, initially the waters of this world will be dried up. All the streams, running waters will be dried up, will be then followed by the drying up. All the trees and plants and will all be dried up. Then finally, even the oceans will no longer exist. And then at the end, the very world that we live in will turn into ashes and nothing will be remained. So therefore, in the verse it says, all those, even the earth, Mount Meru's, oceans, and so forth, our bodies are burned up through the sightings of the suns. And what is to be mentioned about our body, which is so vulnerable? The man's body, where it says, what need is there to mention something extremely frail like the body of a man?
어딘데 인데 단단 알아서 대가서 그래 직된데 파 동주도 타마 차르고 동주고 요래서야 돼 디상기 체르버즈 세계 예서와데 나저 베제나라야 아니 잡도 차위 니마 뒤샤게레 해서 뒤샤네 아니 니마 니버 수버샤요인데 된데스 당보 대나라 유게 심진대서 파 매와 차게레스 주게 심진도 동거레스 주게 심진도 동단데 마기 예번에 야야체네 동도 그래 당보 예번에도 동도 그래 되네 야야체네 미토도 동도 되네 아니 가서 그래 수강괴 하도도 동도 그래 되네 시기 요래서 봐 베제나라야 되네 주기 심지 정말 매와 자소나나 아니 다디간게 지신 낙zel라서 봐 참아감도 되네 아니 자소다 출론라서 봐 림신감네 되네 랍도 사회 니마 뒤샤도 좀 발라야 dimba디 샤도 안에 다 콜라시부디 베데 타와라 차도야 된데 sungu yores ta de deshe jage khade ge 아니 남라 니마 딘데 듄샤와 딘데 마레서와 단데 니마 텔야 차주야 페니 단데 니마 텔야 니마 니기 차주 페 송기 차주 페시 차주 페 니마 듄기 차주 페 온데 아니 디직된 감데 매와 차주 그래 딘데 송고 요레스 카시게 대세 딘데 듄고 요레스.
So there's explanation that we find in certain texts about the dissolution of the world. The first, the sentient beings within the world will be, will be disseminated or will be, disintegrated completely. And this will then be followed by the gradual dissemination of dissolution, the gradual dissolutions of the physical world, beginning from the realm of hell and human, and by the realm of form realms, and then will go through the dissolutions of all those trees and waters and oceans and so forth. And then finally, the very physical, the world system itself will then, reduce to the ashes.
딘데 전에 딘데 야부터 파동 사회 직딘디 다 나가베디 직딘디 파동 사는 나가 동바드네 아니 나가 동바드나로 롱장장 고라잖네 롱유 롱장장 고라잡네 제라야 아니 롱디 직 고란도 다 가르치고 그래 도도도 차네 아니 월라야 아니 롱기 도지 자담성 말에 나라도 단다 도지 초실라 도지 자담 된대도 보지잖니 롱기 긴고로 된대지 차네 월라야 롱기 긴고 사신 트바 다 될라야 털려다 저쪽이 빠제 된대 요래스는 빠제 망보지 지야 요래 롱기 긴고 된대지 차 아니 대제라야다 롱기 디간라야 아니 지 시버저 오지 코네저 봐 시버저 오지 나라도 시버스로 된대저 오지 코 쟤네 다는 대야 추마를 말을 주네 엔 대간라야 추진고차 추진고 다 추진고 되지 가서 그래 롱게 쭉쭉도 마보 땅바 된대게 진전에 된대전에 안에 추가나 지 잡아라지 뭐하다 보지 코네 지 도도래 저기와 대자버디 야로루잖네 되네 추진고 되가라야 사이 진고로 차 된대전에 양 직딘 치마데 된대서 좀 거래서 다 사이 진고데 야차 용도 좀 발라야 안 되가라야 지가서 그래 아니 차라 규rin 뭐 봐발라 되네 안데 사이기고 그 자단 신나 zel라 소바지 안 된대체 어딘데 정보를 했다 여기 지금 치마 중단데 가서 빼제나라 시나 어딘데 시기 요랬어.
So then after the complete dissolutions of the world, and there's nothing existed other than space and the wind, the elements of the wind. And again, when the next world system, the evolution of the world system begins, it begins from the element of the wind. The very element of the wind can form what is called the Vajra-like adamant wind. It is so not just an ordinary wind, but that the wind is so forceful and something that becomes so adamant. And it is also mentioned as in the text, but like the Vajra, the cross Vajra, right? Upon this, the adamant wind cross Vajra will then upon that wood Vajra, then there's existence of the water, what we call the water, wheels, or the water mandala, what's called. Upon this water mandala, then it actually talks about how the four elements, evolution, the four elements coming into being after the complete dissolutions of this system world which is in the text, it mentions about the mandala first. Then, upon the water mandala, the earth mandala will be formed. And once the earth mandala is formed, then upon which, then due to this, waters and moistures, which happens on the world, then all those trees and other plants will gradually grow.
어딘데서 다 지당 캔나바다 대가서 직전음이 가서 그래. 아 상완도 위기림다보다 티뉴 유지리디 상완도 위기림데서 나라야 오다 너가 마시도단 칸데 이미 치마차단 칸데 이미 어딘데서니 자장 요래 너가 동배림바단 tum제 안에 동이금제 이식이 싸고 봤어야 되다. 안에 지마 착배를 받던 투바 안에 도제 사이 차기 봤어야 되는데 지너 동림다 tum바 동이금야다 안에 착배 너 치마디 착배를 받던 tum바 안에 도제 사이 차기네 안에 대가라 된다 된바지 미집이 안에 긴구로 고미야 어딘데 마송 요래서와 지전에 지난번에 경기 연로스.
So probably you may have heard and you may have received the teachings on the Guya Samaja, and the dissolutions of the world and the evolutions of the world. It's actually, the teachings on that is given in conjunction with the teachings from generation stage, or the Kirim, which is the generation stage of the Guya Samaja, where it talks about how one meditates on emptiness by actually reflecting one's mind upon the dissolutions of the world system. Having dissolutions of the world system, which will then be followed by Ishi Sagompa, which means the wisdom bhumi, meditating on wisdom bhumi. The meditating on which having this meditation of wisdom bhumi will then followed by actual evolution of this evolution of the world system. By practice, this is practice in conjunction with the generation of all the supported and supporting mandalas. So these teachings you may have, some of you may have heard that such elaboration, the teachings of this elaborate teachings can be found in the Guya Samaja texts.
올라서 다들 최근의 계절에 자소서 지난 단다데 직딩캄 바 직주야 해야돼 안 직딩캄 대배 나랑도 딱바된 뭐 쉬어지야게 직딩캄 대파 매바 차도 그래 아니 키랑 그 류드다 이임바레스르 봐 최선 키랑 류들이야 착신 마치 있어 류들라 착신 마치 단데들이야 착신 지린 시다 요마레 아니 델레 땜바지 제야게 자직치 요스네 딘데지 송레스 그거로
So that's the to sum up these teachings, the verse that the explanation that we elaborate on these verses is because the fragile body that we have, which is the vulnerable body that we have, one should not have attachment towards that. It is vulnerable and it is subject to disintegrations later or sooner. Not only this body, but also the environments or the world system that we live in, something that we think of is so, sustainable and something that can exist forever, that we have this kind of idea. The very idea, the very world that we are living in is also a subject to undergo disintegrations. So let alone this fragile body, the body of a man.
어다 지쟁업 중에 개버데 쉬샤기 대다라 대금 메다 다메 대에서와 짬에 금에 내메 텔레도 코와 주신 님보 메발라 미주주기 토니 중월저스
So now let's try to read the verse 58. Thus all these are impermanent, without a solid soul. They are not a refuge, not a protector, and not a resting place. Therefore, eyes of a man, you must develop disgust for recurring samsara. And it has no essence, like a plantain tree.
我顶着印度怎么了呀？顶到了是的，军人顶着印度是吧？他那地矿了呀，送香蕉给，俺那绿的，他这个是过来，顶着给大把点不没玩吧？去不那些顶着这人把现在怎么了呀？地个是的，叔叔给绿的浪着，是那边的叔叔，俺们那那个几点的就一甚至长嘛，俺那没到吧？大没吧是吧？没到吧？因为嘛在大没吧的是吧？ 아니 대마체 가서 그래 코베나라 마지 코베난다 당이 손나라 지금 홍차소나 아니 짬매 바로 다 잡가 용게 요말 잡가 용게 매버 가르레스나 잡투기 요말 봐 코베 메게나네 야라바네 티야네 요말에다 잡야지 랑도르게 내 땡고래 아니 네 송게나 레소나나 안 랑도르게 내 땡게 요말 봐 제자 짬매 아니 과매 봐 아니 네 매봐 다직 대화라 대세 네 딘데 매봐 딘데 인도 좀 발라 대래도 서와 딘데 인도 좀 발이야 코베나라 제대도 딘데 인바데 통도 좀 발이야 아니 코바델이야 코바델이야 아니 추신 인부 매발라 서와 코바디 추신다 지버래 추신스는 알아서 길하게 동보들었기도 와 길하게 동보디 찍 야지 안에 되네 그 마이육지 육당야면도 지금 수익균이 팬도에 요서 말아 어디는 코와데 아니지 파데발 지 다섯시리지 있나 수라 발레는 님부 팬도야 지 감에 봐라 딘데 임바데 시에네서와 아니 미초 수도 개보 되져서 뭐 교육이 돈에 정화서 안처럼 코와데나라 바차 대학에 쌤데 다수 칼로네와 투 나랑 좀이 중수당에 중수도 좀 발라야 코발라 바 착신 지역에 쌤데 다 수요 칼로네와 다 착신 매와 착신다 대화 지조스 코발라 잡아들레 수 착신 지조스 미조치기 돈에 정화서스 어딘데 손나샤스
So this, everything that we see right now, including our life and our environments where we live in, and sentient beings and the environments or the world system where we live in, all of these are nature of impermanence and selflessness. So if one is not being careful at this time to make this life purposeful and meaningful by following the teachings of what is to be abandoned and what is to be accomplished, once one is fall into the lower realms, we will not be able to find any refuge, any protectors. Because refuge and protectors and liberations is a result of following the teachings of what is to be abandoned and what is to be accomplished, what is to be achieved, what is to be done. But once you have taken rebirth within these lower realms, suddenly there's no such teachings can be met. And how can one be free oneself and gain a liberations? So therefore it says, Nagarjuna is, by advising his friend King Surabhadra, by addressing him as a highest of a man, by saying, you must develop disgust. In other words, you must develop renunciations for recurring samsara. It is no essence. It's like a plantain tree. The plantain tree, that's although that we see the plantain tree is something that is so attractive, green and attractive. But if you really, go through the peeling of those plantain trees layer by layer, there's nothing can be found, and it's like essenceless. So therefore, one should not have attachment towards one's body as well as the world that we live in, and there's a look and developed a pure renunciations or the disenchantment towards this samsaric existence and or the recurring samsara. So it has, one should look at this as no essence at all, like a plantain tree.
근데 되네. 니중게 삼바사데 게 개침부 이사르스로 이사르스로 니중게 삼바데 베메이나 아니 최 가제신 가제 통보라고 신 냠린 지난 신베이나 아니 디치야고 고급라기메도 하고 니중메도 좀발라야 아니 코와들라 코와스나메도 다들 세텔라야 착신이라고 지겠네 용금도 왔어 빼나 차샤위나다 나란다고 질라 차샤위나 아니 다 파마다 빈자 창마 다 별로 육샤제 대줄려라 대줄려라 당원에 전에 제비나 다지 가서 그래 다 자신 치사를 개 요마로 봐 그러면 수수기 최 남다지 누가 저 있는 자신 치사 개 요마로 봐다 이나야 최 남다지가 도마도야 돼 가르치니 가와라야 자신 체를 하오래서는 다류 도솔라야 차네로 봐 당아 지 구조적으로 최지가 도이나 아니 칼라라 아요 남아요 사마요 어디에 삼네다 대신나래네 봐 쿵규 아용 전에 대신나다고질래네 다 도마tum네로 지 구조로도나 아니 쿵다고지 큐 아용 전에 대대전에 도마도 받을래야 하대야디 신달라 착신 시작해요 말다 그 류들 지불을 차대로 신 차서 시작해요 말 파마빈자는 별로 유시하러 왔어 어디 대가란서 지 가서 그래 줄을 마땅게래디 거변날 냐대게래디 말한서 세대라 차배 차신되기 쉬우지 찡되기도 왔어
So cultivation of renunciation is something that is crucial as the practitioners of the Dharma, because without cultivation of pure renunciations, it's certainly not possible for one to engage in the practice of Dharma practice purely. So pure Dharma practice must take place on the basis of cultivation of renunciations. Renunciations, one should, which means that one should cultivate a disenchantment towards this world as well as one's inner body without having any. One should not have attachment and attachment and desire attachment towards one's body as well as the world that one live in. Because with this without having these renunciations, and due to this attachment, and not having been able to cultivate disenchantment towards oneself and the world that we live in, one is not able to engage in the practice Dharma purely. For instance, myself, although I have left everyone, my parents, my relatives, and acquaintances, and someone who has been very dear to myself as a friend and so forth, left all of them in Tibet, and I traveled myself, all by myself, to India, and ventured to India for the practice of Dharma. And I do not have attachment towards all of my parents and friends and relatives and acquaintances and so forth. I have not been able to actually engage in pure Dharma practice, not been able to go to retreat and do a long period of practices and so forth. It's because I have attachment towards my body. If I venture on the practice and go to retreat by myself, then due to the attachment to my body, well, I may not be able to have enough food. I may not be able to sustain my life, and I may get sick and so on and so forth. And all of this is happening in my mind is because I have attachment towards my body, which actually confine me within this samsaric existence and not letting me to be able to engage in the pure Dharma practice. So long as we have attachment towards one's body and this world, and one will certainly be confined within this boundary of unenlightened existence. It is therefore to make one's practice of Dharma become an actual cause for liberations, one must cultivate disenchantment towards this world system as well as oneself.
어딘데 손대 담발라야 나도 배워라야 그 담배지 요래서 봐. 상준의 타르장 유준의 마타르스네. 상준의 타르장 아니 유준의 마타르스 대 배지 담배디 당가란 잡아질라 딱다 자기도 대야 거국도 쟁기도 쓰러와. 당원에 전에 지 파유네 아니 파마 빈자 요래 랑글 롱바 요래 대조 창마 다 셈다 첨보지제네 대조 창마 요네르와 아니 지 상상 망보게 까니 망보 잡네 아 도발레 레스르와 도발레 버드 다 이나야 도발레네 아니 양 소소게 최고야게 최대 삼만남다지 두마투바 레데기 요레스.
So we have a saying in Tibetan by saying that although you're able to cross the rivers, the stream of river, but you are not being able to cross the river that is in region, the particular region where you live in. It is that this example is very suitable for myself because I have left everything behind in Tibet and ventured myself to India all by myself to engage in the practice. However, that I have not been able to engage in the practice purely or not being able to engage in the proper practice of the Dharma, that is because of my attachment.
Oh yeah. 어딘데 이제 샤스나 티버지 연나 컨트롤. 아주 티버티레 지기 연나.
So, well, Kishla is wondering if you have any questions regarding these teachings, for today's teaching.
Geshe-la, if you're having trouble getting rid of attachments, the rest of us have a long way to go.
But Kishla, that Kishla getende, so bolya chajin je ne nyamle nemas namata bene tanganzu da kharcho korcho da pe haring wo shivi ste de ro sa da.
당가란도 참말로 간도 지도 지고레스.
So we have to make an effort to whatever we could to be able to engage in the actual practice of Dharma.
까담베 계신이나 바기 다직 다니 마시나나 아니 치치메 돈다 두버지다 로직 로니 마시나나 새로 진 땡지 두마 두두버지 지기 예승부레스와 대나마스나 가란도 다와진이 대야 예위나 대나라야 치치마게 돈다 침부지 두두그레스 아니 로카시지 대위인다 소소 약보 지투비나 아니 새로 땡지 두마 페지직 제나 두둔도 가버레스.
As Kadamba Masters has said that if one is able to, sustain my life for 1 month or 2 months, I'll be able to make my life meaningful and purposeful. If I'm able to sustain my life for 1 year or 2 years, I probably be able to engage in the practice and to be able to, reach the state of everlasting happiness. But it's just like ourselves, even though that we are uncertain how long that we are going to live on this world, but whatever the time that we are using at this point, the life that we're able to sustain on this planet Earth, we should make an effort to make it, make one's life meaningful and purposeful by engaging in the practice of Dharma.
Any questions? Points?
Question?
Thank you for your example.
No. Question?
No, I just appreciate your sharing with us your sense of what you have yet to accomplish. I mean, I see you as having accomplished so much and it's inspiring to hear what you how you see what's left to do. Thank you for that.
The like mixing developed in the game and looking la
Listen.
developed in the game and more that the can like the zoom to get and the Chazanlia depend on Chimchira Jones and Chazan, and the Chazan now to get the Chazanlia that you in the one to switch in Sundo. Then more developed in the game.
Yes. Huh? Yes, okay.
Okay, so we should say the
Oh, that-
dedication prayers. Beginning on page 23 and 24. Continuing with auspicious wishes on page 28. Dagi jine sape
Yewa de la dowa Chebara jizu sanja Tembe nyembo rindu seji sho Öye joshe medo ra Shizho linshi nile yewa Sanje shindo lide rewa yi Chugu namda shin aju pasha Yanda lama da cheme chuji be la lo chuji Sadan lamji yonde razo ne Doji changi ho yo do shu Rena me de la gane ya da ya mi Kuze rabden shin Nanga chile chujuru ye wad Losan dembe dreme sa tsunji Rove me se tatu ne yurule Korve shingam su Penda dewa maru jumbe Chere sewa tinzen ya soyi Shabe si de padu de yurule Jida chenpa tang kundu sangpo che yang de jine Che da kunyi je so da lo che Yawa de da tam che ra do Yawa tam je ki Mawa kan da cho do nga wa de Da xin ge we za wa de hu ya Sangpo ju je ra do mo wa ra ji Okay. All also gina to check.
Also, you should
That's